And it's time now for our Sunday group. Syndicated columnist George Will, Neera Tanden, president of the liberal think tank Center for American Progress, GOP strategist Karl Rove, author of the new book, The Triumph of William McKinley, and Charles Lane from the Washington Post. Well, George, have at it. Your thoughts about what Donald Trump had to say.
Well, Gene McCarthy, the late senator, once said that the rule in Washington is that anything said 3 times is a fact. So he subscribes to that. He says, I'm going to win. I think I'm going to win. You know, I'm not one of those other guys that goes down. I don't go down. I go up. My whole life has been about winning. I'm going to win. There's 3 times, so it must be true. And at one point you said Trump, have called the leaders in Washington losers. He says, no. I called them stupid. Then he says that Ted Cruz, who's now ahead of him in Iowa, is a little bit of a maniac. The gradation's interesting. And he's a maniac because he can't get along and cajole people the way presumably Trump can, who calls them stupid. You didn't even have time to get to the latest Trumpism this week that demonstrated his invincible ignorance of how our government works. He said, as president, I will issue an executive order requiring that anyone who kills a police officer gets the death penalty. How does that work in our system, starting with the 19 states that have no death penalty? He lives, if you liked President Obama's use of executive power, you're going to love President Trump.
Neera, you have been a top policy advisor to Hillary Clinton for years. We want to point out that in the Fox poll, Clinton now has moved out to a big lead among Iowa Democrats at 50% to 36% for Bernie Sanders. But I want to ask you about Trump's charge that Hillary Clinton has killed hundreds of thousands of people with her policies.
Yeah, I think it's an outrageous thing that he said. I mean, it's one of a million outrageous things he said. I think I look forward to a general election debate between the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton on foreign policy or any other issue, actually. So, you know, I mean, I think it's part and parcel of kind of the irresponsible rhetoric he has. And he doesn't, as you went through the interview, he doesn't have much to back it up, but that's part of what he does. He attacks Democrats, Republicans, women, every group in America, and I think that's a losing strategy. But so far, it has been gaining him strength in the Republican Party. I'll concede that.
You can see that you'd like to make the Republican Party the Trump Party. Is that, how much is he hurting the Republican Party, Karl?
Well, that depends on who the nominee ends up being. But I thought it was interesting when he came out on a statement on Muslims. Every other Republican candidate said in one way, shape, or form, that's a really bad idea. And we saw it in your interview. You pressed him on it. How are you going to keep the Muslims out of the country? And he said, we're going to use surveillance papers and documents. So the Canadian businessman whose passport does not say he's a Muslim, are we going to surveil everybody in the world to figure out whether or not they are a Muslim or not? I mean, look, he grabs the angst of the American people about a situation and has a good soundbite, but the substance is completely devoid. And in doing these things, he creates damage to himself. He lives in a different world in which the good polls matter and every bad poll doesn't. If you look at, for example, since October 1st, he says, I'm beating Hillary by a big margin. There have been 12 polls since October 1st. He beats her in 2, loses to her in 9, and ties her in 1. And she has, in the Real Clear Politics average, a 3.3% lead. And worse, you get into the internals of all of these polls. Take the Quinnipiac poll, which he dismissed. If you go into the internals, it represents what you see in a half a dozen other polls in the last couple of months. Unfavorable numbers among all critical voter groups that are disastrous. You know, he can't even get the margin among white voters that Mitt Romney got in 2012 to offset some of his loss among swing voters.
Karl, how serious is the talk among Republican leaders that we heard this week about a brokered convention to stop him? And what about Ted Cruz, who in that Des Moines Register poll, which he discredited before he'd even seen it, Cruz now leads Trump by 10 points in Iowa.
Yeah. Look, Cruz will win Iowa. This has been building for a while. And Trump is going to have to deal with the fact that he's based his entire campaign on, I'm leading the polls, I'm winning the polls, therefore I'm the winner. And what happens when he loses Iowa? But here's the other thing that is going on, and that is that Look, I wrote about this 3 or 4 weeks ago. What does a brokered convention mean? What it means is that nobody arrives in Cleveland with a majority of the delegates. And that's likely to happen because we have 28 contests between February 1st and March 14th, which are all proportional except one. And as a result, in the early contest, when we got a lot of candidates, I mean, Carly Fiorina is going to get a delegate out of Iowa because all you got to do is get 3.3% and you get a delegate.
So you could end up with a brokered convention.
But a brokered convention is a different thing. A brokered convention is one in which, in the smoke-filled back room, people are going to get together and cut a deal, and something magical is going to appear. I bet you, whoever goes into that convention in the lead, as long as they're close to a majority, ends up being the nominee, regardless of who they are.
We asked you for questions for the panel, and we got this on Facebook from John plus Mary. They write, why is it okay for a Democrat named Jimmy Carter to stop Iranians, a.k.a. Muslims, from coming into our country? And why are they attacking Trump for trying to keep our country safe? Chuck, how do you answer John plus Mary?
Well, I would say that it's comparing apples and oranges. First of all, it's true that the immigration law gives the president very broad authority.
Let me just quickly say, the immediate reaction from a lot of Republicans and Democrats, unconstitutional. A lot of learned scholars this week said maybe not.
No, hold on a second. The immigration law gives the president very broad authority to ban this or that category of people from coming into the country, okay? But that power, like many others, can be abused, and what Donald Trump is proposing to do is to abuse that power grossly. And the contrast with Carter is very stark. Carter picked a nationality, a particular category of people who carry a certain passport, very easy to identify. And by the way, he included a humanitarian exception, implying that people who were legitimate refugees from that regime could still enter the United States. Donald Trump said total and complete ban. It would be as if Carter, in response to the revolution and the hostage-taking in Iran, had said, I'm banning all Shia Muslims because the Ayatollah Khomeini is the head of the Shia movement in the United States, regardless of whether they come from Iran or not. And so this is a very, I know this is out there. People are saying, well, it was okay for Jimmy Carter, this is media bias. But the two cases couldn't be more different. And, you know, in fact, the contrast illustrates how poorly thought out and how overbroad the Trump proposal was.
Quickly.
Constitutionality. The question was, when he initially announced that, he said Americans who are Muslims abroad could not get back into the country.
Yeah,
he would make an exception for the military, and then when all heck broke loose, then he stepped back from being that I hate to say it, stupid.
I mean, the fact that we're debating this 6 days later on Sunday, when it happened on Monday, tells you how much Donald Trump is driving the debate in the Republican Party and why it's legitimate to say it is the party of Trump right now, because he is the one driving this conversation in the country.
It's the media of Trump.
Very quickly.
Not according to support amongst Republicans.
In the Monmouth poll, which is well regarded, if you look at their data on repeat likely caucus goers, Trump is fourth.